What's going on, everybody? It's your man, Louie T, here with a brand new installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, number of things to get to today. Last episode, we talked about the, carousel that happens at the end of every season with the coaches, and now the GMs are becoming a real thing as well. And we had some late movement yesterday or a couple of days ago. Surprise firing in Vegas. Not necessarily a surprise from the standpoint of them moving on, but it didn't feel like they were going to move on. From all reports, Antonio Pierce was operating and moving as if he was going to be back in a part of the decision-making process moving forward. He was talking about hiring, new assistants. They had already fired their offensive coordinator, and so there were other things that needed to take place. And he was moving and operating like he was going to be a part of that process. Then he got fired. They didn't do anything with Tom Telesco. So the assumption was he's safe. 2 days later, Tom Telesco's fired. So now we got to have a Raiders conversation. So we're going to do that. And we're going to talk about a couple of topics. Sam Darnold, I think, is the most interesting quarterback in the postseason in terms of his offseason value. And he did not make a very profound statement on Sunday Night Football. So I think he's got some work to do. So we'll talk about that, and we'll preview Penn State, Notre Dame, among other topics on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 400 and let's get this thing right, shall we? I think we shall. 473rd episode. That's the date. Let's get that right. So we are on January 9th, correct? January 9th. And we are on episode 473. So let's get that correct. All right. Now we cooking with grease. Welcome to the 473rd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. We will not waste any time today. We'll get straight to the proceedings this evening, and we'll jump straight into the gem dropping session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So we talked about the coaching carousel. We talked about, GM movement, and there are 6 coaches that were relieved of their duties either in the season or soon thereafter the season met its conclusion. So there's 6 openings from a job head coach perspective in the NFL. And there were only 2 GM jobs open. The 6 head coaching, let's see if I can get these off the top of my head. Jets, Saints, Raiders, Bears, Jaguars, that's 5. And the last was the Raiders, right? They had just fired Antonio Pierce to make it 6, right? Wait. Did I say Patriots? I might have said the Raiders already. So Patriots. It's either one of those 2 that I didn't say. So those are your 6. Jets, Raiders, Patriots, Bears, Saints, Jaguars. 6. There are only 2 general manager openings. Titans and Jets were your 2 general manager openings. We thought Trent Baalke was going to be fired in Jacksonville. We felt like that was a foregone conclusion, and it didn't happen. Didn't feel like Tom Telesco was going to be relieved of his duties in Vegas, but then again, it didn't feel like Antonio Pierce was going to be relieved of his duties in Vegas either. But here we are. Tom Telesco was relieved of his duties today by the Las Vegas Raiders after long discussions between Tom Brady and Raiders owner Mark Davis. Now, I don't know all of the ins and outs of this situation, all of the bolts and nuts of this situation, pause. But let me just say this. Tom Brady has the juice in Vegas. He has the juice. And he has Mark Davis's ear. Remember, Tom Brady became a minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. And I think his word carries a ton of weight within that organization right now. And I'll take it a step further. I wasn't the biggest Tom Telesco fan, right? When he was in San Diego with the Chargers / LA with the Chargers, he wasn't very good. So them signing Christian Wilkins last year was one of the most head-scratching, signees of the offseason. They gave him a ton of money, and I'm not sure if anybody else was willing to give him as much as they gave him. I think they kind of priced themselves out of their own market. They outbid themselves there. The Dolphins didn't want him back. And so I'm not telling you that there weren't any other teams that were interested, but what did Christian Wilkins do this year? I'd like to know if there are any Raiders fans out there that have the answer. I'd love to know what he did this season. But anyway, Telesco wasn't, to me, a great GM hire in the first place. But to give a guy 1 year is always tough. Felt the same thing about Rand Carthen with the Titans. It's tough when you just get 1 year. Gerard Mayo with the Patriots as the head coach there. It's tough when you get 1 year. When they hired you and they knew that it was going to be a process for this thing to be turned around, it's tough to get canned after 1 year. Who thought the Raiders were going to win anything of significance this year? I didn't, not with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, but that's nor here nor there. Here's what I really want to talk about. I talked about this briefly last episode, but I think there is a real conversation that has to take place about the importance of general manager and head coach being tied at the hip. For so long, we've seen teams hire and fire coaches and general managers in separate settings, right? In separate sequences where you may have a GM who isn't doing a great job. He gets hired or fired, but the head coach remains. They bring in a new general manager, and he's just got this coach that's been here that he didn't select, but he's got to make it work, right? The coach may have a vision for the roster and what he thinks needs. And remember, this is the thing that people on the outside don't usually take into consideration. A head coach's job is to focus on the here and now. I have to win now because if I don't, I will be fired. A general manager's job is to worry about the here and now and into the future. So he has to juggle both simultaneously. And if you don't have a general manager who is in lockstep with the head coach, the vision that the GM has for the team versus the vision that the head coach has could be vastly different. Then there's a clashing and butting of the heads. Then it becomes a power struggle. And then it becomes who's going to win. We saw this in Tennessee just a couple of seasons ago. Titans are in the midst of trying to win the AFC South division. They're like 7-4. They're not terrible, but they just hit a little rough patch in the season. And all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. There's a power struggle internally. There was always a little bit of, dare I say, tension because Mike Vrabel never wanted to trade away A.J. Brown. That was never his intent. The GM saw it differently, traded away A.J. Brown, and drafted Treylon Burks. How'd that work out for you? So Vrabel essentially got the GM canned in season. And then after the season, Vrabel himself was then fired. So it didn't really work out for him as he initially thought. But I go back to Shanahan and Lynch in San Francisco as the blueprint, I think, that everyone's sort of chasing here, right? GM, head coach, kind of tied at the hip, come in together as one, are in lockstep with the decision-making process, and they kind of move as a unit, so to speak. To me, one of the worst things you can do with a front office is hire one or the other at separate junctures. Or if you're going to allow one to be there, then it needs to be the general manager who is then picking the head coach. But the worst situation is a coach already being there and then you hire a GM. Because now that GM is inheriting that coach. And look, I've always said this. If I'm in a position to get a job, I'll tell you whatever it is you need to hear for me to get the job. So if you're interested in the Jacksonville Jaguars job and you're not sure if you're going to get another gig somewhere else as a head coach, and the Jaguars say, are you interested in working? Are you okay with working with Trent Baalke? You know, yeah. No, he's cool. I've got a relationship with him. He's fine. Yeah. I heard good things about Trent. No, you didn't. You don't like Trent Baalke, and you would like it if you could pick your own general manager. But guess what? Yeah, no. Trent Baalke's fine. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. I've heard good things about him. He did a great job in San Francisco. I think we can work together really well. That's what you're going to say if you want the job. But internally, inside, you're like, no, I would prefer him to not be here. But such is life. So now you're going into that job already thinking it'd be pretty cool if he got fired and a new GM came in here that I had some say-so with, and we could move forward with that. And vice versa. If you're a GM, you would much rather come into a situation where there's no coach. You get to pick that coach or be a part of the process of picking that coach so that there is that synchronicity, right? There is that bond of, hey, we came into this thing together. We tied at the hip. We're responsible for one another. And Brady pretty much convinced Mark Davis that if you're going to fire Antonio Pierce, you probably should move on from Tom Telesco, clean the entire slate, and start anew with two guys that are joined at the hip. That was Brady's pitch to Mark Davis. If you're going to move on from Antonio Pierce, you probably should move on from Tom Telesco too. And I talked about this on last episode that Ben Johnson is a guy that has made it abundantly clear that wherever he goes, he would like to have a say in who the GM is going to be. I don't think he wants to go somewhere where there's already a GM in place. And like we heard a rumor today, and this is the time of the year as we start to get into this whole coaching cycle and the draft process. I always call it lying season. So you be careful, right? Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man, Louie T. Some dangerous times out here in these streets. Be careful. But I saw an article today that said that Ben Johnson is quote unquote, intrigued by the Jacksonville job, which means he probably feels like, hey, Trevor Lawrence is really talented, which I don't disagree with that. And I tell you, that kid, Brian Thomas Jr., one of the best receivers in football. I don't think that's lost on Ben Johnson either. Evan Ingram, he's like, I could do some shit with Evan Ingram. Like, there's talent in Jacksonville is what I'm trying to tell you. You add another draft in there, add another receiver, you know, add some more offensive pieces, offensive lineman here or there. Bigsby isn't a bad back. You still have Travis Etienne. I don't know for how much longer, but there's a lot of pieces there that Ben Johnson's probably saying, you know what, I can work with that. I can work with that. And if he is intrigued, if that is a true statement, and we can't confirm nor deny that, but assuming that he is intrigued, starts with Trevor Lawrence, obviously, but there's some weapons there that are very fascinating. Not to mention Christian Kirk is still there because he got injured. They were going to trade him. He got injured. He's still there. So there's stuff there. But he doesn't want to work with Trent Baalke. Nobody does. Nobody of any ilk, nobody of any worth that has options wants to work with Trent Baalke. This is the problem in Jacksonville. They can't get out of their own way. And if you want to hire a guy the caliber of a Ben Johnson who has options, who could easily just go back to Detroit if he so chooses, like, he doesn't have to leave. He's got a good thing going. You might have to meet some of his demands. And if you're Jacksonville and he blows you away in the interview process and you're like, we got to have this guy. And he's like, yeah, but I want to bring in my guy, Lance Newmark. He's in Washington as their assistant GM. I want him to be my GM. If that can't happen, I'm not coming. What do? Well, in Vegas, they don't have that issue because that's what Tom Brady's talking about. I want two guys coming in here that understand each other, who know what each other's strengths and weaknesses are, and are going to come in to this process in lockstep. I got to see this thing unfold firsthand in Washington with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters. Those two came in lockstep. Peters got there first, sought out, you know, all the candidates, but really locked in and honed in on DQ. And those two have been joined at the hip ever since, and they've done a spectacular job. And remember where Adam Peters came from in San Francisco. He saw the blueprint of Lynch and Shanahan. He saw the blueprint, and he said, that's what I want. When I get my opportunity, that's what I want it to look like. Don't think that that's lost on Tom Brady. Don't think that Tom Brady hasn't peeped the scenery, hasn't talked to people, doesn't know the inner workings of the NFL, and doesn't know enough about, you know, building an organization to know if you're going to do this, there's a right way to do this and there's a wrong way to do this. And I think the new wave that's going to take over the front office organizational building structure is, hey, if we're gonna get rid of one or the other, we might just get rid of both. If, again, assuming that the general manager hasn't been doing a great job or he just got there. Assuming that that general manager, like, for instance, the Giants situation, it wouldn't behoove them to fire one or the other. If you're going to start anew, fire both Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. You can't fire one or the other. That's dumb. Because if you keep Joe Schoen on as your GM and move on from Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen hires the next coach, and then Schoen could get fired next year, and now that same coach he hired is still there, and now you're bringing in a new GM. Or you're firing that coach and Schoen at the same time. Now you're paying two different coaches and going to have to pay a third coach, all because you decided to hold on to the GM, right? Instead, either those two are going to make it together or they're going to fail together, and you fire both at the same time and you start anew with a clean blank slate and say, all right, we're going to go get our GM. He's going to pick this head coach, and we're going to move forward with this structure, with our GM and our head coach in lockstep. And if the shit doesn't work, both of y'all can go. That's how I think it should be. And I think you're gonna see that be the new wave. You know, the NFL is a copycat league. Nobody's had more success over the last 6 years outside of New England, or excuse me, outside of the Chiefs. No one's had more success than San Francisco. No one's had more success than San Francisco. They've gone to the NFC Championship game every year that they've made the playoffs. They went to the NFC Championship game at a bare minimum. They missed the playoffs in 2020 with all the injuries. They missed the playoffs this year with all the injuries. Same narrative both times. Tons of injuries. That's why they missed the playoffs. But in 2019, went to the Super Bowl. In 2021, went to the NFC Championship game. In 2022, went to the NFC Championship game. In 2023, went to the Super Bowl. No one's had more success outside of the Kansas City Chiefs. No one's had more success than San Francisco. And you see the structure and the way that they built their organization. I think other teams are taking notice. Obviously, Washington having tremendous success. Don't think that Tom Brady didn't see that quick turnaround in Washington. They went from the laughing stock of the NFL, one of the worst run organizations in football, to now 12-5, playing for, a chance to be in the divisional round and one step away from the NFC Championship game. Like, this is all that is in front of the Commanders after being a 4-win team a season ago. That didn't happen by coincidence or happenstance. They made a concerted effort to build this thing the right way. Clean slate. GM picked first. That GM picks a head coach. Those two are in lockstep, and you move forward with that building block of your organization. This is no accident in Vegas. It took them a little while to get to this conclusion, but I think that's going to hold Jacksonville back. If they don't make a move on Bulky, and it's not too late. It's never the wrong time to make the right decision. Sheik Khan seems like a man that is very stubborn, and he's going to do things his way. And a lot of times, billionaires are that way. Million and billionaires are that way. They're used to getting their way. They're used to things working out in their favor. And so he thinks he's doing the right thing. But he's actually harming his organization by holding on to Trent Baalke. And you're going to run quality coaches off who are actually interested in your job because you do have a quarterback. You do have talent. I just told you, Brian Thomas Jr. is one of the best receivers, not rookie receivers. I didn't say rookie. I didn't put rookie in front of that. He's one of the best receivers in the league already. There is talent in Jacksonville. You can turn that program around quickly if you get the right guy in there, the right guys with an S in there. But if you keep Trent Baalke, you could be messing yourself up. Tom Brady apparently has the juice in Vegas, and he had enough of it to sway owner Mark Davis to go ahead and fire Tom Telesco after it initially looked like Telesco was going to be kept on board and he was going to be a part of the process of selecting the next head coach. Instead, they're going to wipe the slate clean, and they're going to get two guys that are ready to work with one another, that they're going to try to see if those two can't maybe put their imprint, their thumbprint on this Raiders organization. And I think it starts with getting a quarterback. You got to find one somewhere, but you got to start at the top. And looks like the Raiders are going to do that. And unfortunately, if you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, Jaguars are not. And that's tough. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. If you're out there and you want your comment to be read, use the super chat function to ensure that your comment is read on the air and to jump straight to the front of the line. But if you're out there and you want your comment to be read, if time permits, I cannot ensure that time will permit. We are on a tight schedule today. However, you can use the hashtag Louie T Live. And if it is pertinent and time permits, we'll get to your comment. I want to start off this conversation by talking about two topics quickly: Sam Darnold and Bill Belichick. I'm going to start with Bill Belichick quickly because I don't foresee him leaving the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Don't see him bolting after just signing. Now, I've seen different things floated out there that his contract is one that suggests that after June 1st, his buyout is $1 million. But before then, his buyout is some crazy, inordinate amount of money, which makes a ton of sense because by the time June 1 hits, who's looking for a head coach in June? Nobody, right? So that's why they set it to that date. Before then, obviously, now that you're going through this process, Belichick's name has come up. Now, first of all, I don't think teams are seriously interested, which is why Bill Belichick went ahead and beat the traffic and went over and got the job at UNC. He wasn't going to wait around because he already floated out there a little bit of, innuendo of, hey, I'm want to get back in this thing. Was really good. And there were enough jobs open that if someone were interested, they would have at least, put out a feeler like, hey, Bill, we about to start lining up candidates. We would love to interview you. But there was no such intrigue and interest surrounding him. And he was like, you know what? F y'all. I'm finna go to college. I ain't got time for this shit. I'm trying to get back on the sidelines. Y'all playing games. I'm out. Now, all of a sudden, he's gotten the UNC job, and now people want to come calling like, hey, man, you interested in coming back to the league? He's like, man, y'all F off. He's not going anywhere. And he literally just, now I get it. It's college. And you can literally look a kid in his face and say, I'm not going nowhere. And then 48 hours later, you taking a contract to go to the NFL or to a different program. Like, college football is cutthroat. Dog eat dog. You can't trust nobody. DTA, don't trust anybody, as a wise man used to say, right? DTA in college football. Can't trust your coach. Can't trust the players, right? Can't trust the administration. Can't trust nobody in college. Now, with, the advent of NIL, you definitely can't trust nobody. I think I seen a college basketball program. I think it was Florida State, where their coach was withholding NIL money. Like, they was like, yo, bro, what's going on, coach? He was like, y'all gonna get y'all money, man. Don't worry. They was about to stage a protest and a boycott, and they weren't gonna play no more games. And he's like, I'm gonna get your money. Don't worry. And so they played, and then he still ain't give them their money. So this NIL thing, it's a game changer, right? But I said all this to say that, and it was funny because I was reading the comment section, and people were like, well, Bill has already committed to, the recruiting process, and he's already got recruits. And I'm like, that shit don't matter. That don't matter at all. Just like Bill could tell these recruits, I'm not going nowhere. I'm gonna be here, and then he could take an NFL job. Them same recruits can decommit and end up somewhere else. All they got to do is not like Bill Belichick the first 3 days they on campus, and they could decommit or they could go into the transfer portal. Ain't no honor amongst thieves. Like, but Belichick ain't going nowhere. I said all that to say this. He ain't going nowhere. He's going to be coaching at UNC. But I want to talk about Sam Darnold real quick. Sam Darnold, I think, is in an interesting situation. Not that dissimilar from a couple of guys. Baker Mayfield, one. But I think it's more like Case Keenum, who was also a former Minnesota Viking who had this type of season in Minnesota and then cashed in and went to Denver on a multi-year deal and didn't perform well. I think it's more like that than anything else. But Sam Darnold is really interesting because here's a former number 3, and this is the thing. Case Keenum was never a first-round pick. Baker Mayfield was a former first-round pick. When you're a former first-round pick, you're going to get multiple opportunities to prove you can't play because obviously at some point your skill set was valued at a high enough level that you were deemed to be worthy of being selected in the first round of the NFL draft. And that's not lost on people when it doesn't work the first, second, or third time. Okay. If you're a first-round pick, you're going to get multiple opportunities to prove that you can't do it in this league at a high enough level to be a starter. Sam Darnold has bounced around the league, started his career in New York with the Jets, went to a number of different destinations, the Panthers, the 49ers. He's now with the Vikings. And this is a rare opportunity that you get when you're a first-round pick, right? He got to start in Carolina. Baker Mayfield got to start in Carolina. He got to play very sparingly, not much in San Francisco, but it was a good experience for him, obviously. But he started the bulk of his career in New York with the Jets, and it didn't go well. And he's in a very good scheme for his skill set. I think that the Vikings head coach has turned into somewhat of a quarterback whisperer. He's done a phenomenal job. I mean, I watched him almost make Dwayne Haskins look like an NFL quarterback, God rest his soul. So when I tell you that Kevin O'Connell is a pseudo quarterback whisperer, he's got the Midas touch. Any quarterback that he touches seems to turn to gold. I mean, look at Kirk Cousins' implosion since he's left Minnesota. Anyway, it's a great system. It's a great fit. But more importantly, and I said this before when talking about Sam Darnold, he's somewhere where he's believed in. Kevin O'Connell believes in him. His teammates believe in him. And sometimes you just need that support system. You need that belief in you. And I fear that if you take him out of that environment, out of that ecosystem, and you put him somewhere else, he's not going to succeed at the level he's played at this season. But as much as we talked about, Sam Darnold, or at least others have, talked about him potentially being a hot commodity, because there aren't many guys that are going to be great options this offseason if you're looking for a veteran quarterback to give you a chance to win right now. It's him. It's probably Aaron Rodgers, maybe Justin Fields and Russell Wilson if you're interested in that kind of thing. We'll see what the Steelers decide to do with those two quarterbacks. But there aren't a lot of options. It's pretty skimp, and then there's the, usual list of suspects as journeyman bridge type backups that could start for you if you had a young guy that you were grooming, like a Marcus Mariota, like a Jacoby Brissett. Those guys are always available every year. So Sam Darnold is in a really good position because he'll be the best of that group, whatever it looks like. But I think there's pressure on him to play well in this postseason because they had a chance to get the number 1 seed. They had a chance to have a first round bye and have the playoffs go through Minnesota with a performance on Sunday night. And he had his worst game of the season. The pressure was its greatest. And I had a conversation with my buddy about Sam Darnold, and I said, I wonder if Sam Darnold's going to play this well when the pressure is its greatest in the postseason. Regular season and postseason are two different animals. Ask Dak Prescott about that. So it's a different level of pressure that comes with the postseason. Not everybody's equipped to deal with it. He didn't play well in a high-pressure, high-stakes game on Sunday night. Missed Justin Jefferson for a touchdown twice. Not once, twice. Early in that game. That's a 10-6 game at halftime. There for the taking, and he didn't play well. By far and away his worst game of the season. They go to LA, a place that they've already lost this season, on Monday night, Super Wild Card Weekend, the final game of Wild Card Weekend, and he doesn't play well. What does that do to his stock? There's already been, a conversation that suggests that the Vikings would love to have him back, and they may just slap the franchise tag on him so that they got more time to figure out how they want this J.J. McCarthy, Sam Darnold situation to go. Because what a lot of people fail to realize is Sam Darnold's still relatively young. How old do you think Sam Darnold is? How old do you think Sam Darnold is? I'm about to check my damn self. Y'all don't cheat. How old do you think Sam Darnold is? Because I can tell you he's pretty young. I knew he was young because he came into the league young. So it's not like, well, we got to take Sam Darnold. We got to get rid of Sam Darnold. He's 33 and give the young kid a chance. Sam Darnold's still young, relatively young. So I see 26. I see 27. He's 27 years old. Still relatively young by NFL standards at the quarterback position. A lot of good football left in front of him if he's turned the corner, which we can't say for sure that he's done. But like I said, we'll see what happens. But I digress. He's got to play well. He's got to play well. And if he plays well in the postseason, the Vikings have a decision to make. And if they don't want him back or they don't make a good enough offer, there will be money out there for him somewhere else. If he doesn't play well, then it gets a little murky for him. Then he's kind of back to where he was before this whole process even started. Now, I don't know if 2 games can undo a great season that he just turned in. But on this big stage, we just had a prime timer, and you're going to have another prime timer for everybody to see. That could go a long way in determining what happens with Sam Darnold. So we'll see. Let's get to the comment section real quick. And then we will get out of here. I'll get to garbage time, and then we'll get out of here. Mr. Pink, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Mr. Pink writes, would you be so kind to share your bets you'd make Sunday? I haven't looked at any odds. I haven't looked at anything like from a bet perspective. So I couldn't tell you what bets I would be willing to make. I'd have to see the odds. I'd have to see what I was wagering on before I could, tell you what you should or shouldn't bet on. So I ain't got nothing for you in that regard, because I haven't really sat down and looked at any of the odds for any of the games, to be honest with you. Over, under, point totals, spread, none of that. I ain't looked at any prop bets, none of that stuff. So I don't really have nothing for you. Sorry. I wish I could give you something, but I really don't have nothing for you. JLG, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. JLG writes, what up, Lou? I never thought I would say this, but good luck to your Fighting Irish tonight. I can't stand Penn State. Wow, that is saying something coming from you. I don't have a Penn State issue, but I want to beat them. So there's that. We're going to talk about that game here in a second, but I appreciate the luck you're sending my way. I really do. Hopefully we take care of business tonight. Blake Taylor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Blake writes, Louie, can I refund my Hilltop tickets? I won tickets to the game, and I'm trying to go get the dub for us. I emailed you, and yeah, we can work that out. We can get your money back, your refund for that. Absolutely. You know what to do. And congratulations on winning some tickets to Tampa. So you know what to do. Go get the dub and bring it back home. So yeah, I'll send you all the information you need. I'll check my email and we'll get that situation ironed out for sure. All right. So with that said, let's transition to our final segment of the show and garbage time. So we are going to talk about the college football playoffs. We got one tonight, we got one tomorrow night, and then we will have the final on the 20th of January, if I'm not mistaken. So Notre Dame, Penn State tonight, Texas and Ohio State on Friday, and then the winners of those two contests will meet on Monday, January 20th in the national championship title game. I've said this all along. This is Notre Dame's best chance to win a national championship in this wide open format. The four teams that are left are all beatable. College football has been full of parity this year. There has been no dominant team all year long, and I think it is reflective of the four teams that are left. Really, Ohio State and Texas have been in this conversation. Penn State has almost lost like 3 or 4 different occasions, including at USC, who stinks, right? So I don't necessarily love Penn State. I think that this game, Penn State Notre Dame, is like looking in the mirror. Like as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, I feel like we're staring in the mirror at ourselves looking at Penn State. You're looking at two programs led by black head coaches, and they've made a big deal about that. I don't even really pay attention to that stuff when it comes to college football. There's so many black head coaches around college football. Now, are they coaching prominent programs? No, and I think that's why they made a big deal out of this. But so there's that. Then there is the fact that neither one of these two teams, quarterback-wise, are very good. I'm not a Drew Aller guy. I think he's a basic. You already know how I feel about, Notre Dame's quarterback. He's a basic. So Riley Leonard, let me make sure I'm using names here because I know not everybody's, college football fans. But Riley Leonard is a basic. And he's more dynamic with his legs than he is his arms. I think he impacts games more so with his legs than he does his arm. Whereas Penn State's run game is largely predicated on their backs. So if they can run the ball, they are going to be tough to beat. And this is the thing I have confidence in with Notre Dame. Defensively, Notre Dame is as good as any team left in the entire bracket. And this is why I got confidence that Notre Dame can win the entire thing. But they're going to have to stop the run. And the same thing could be said for Penn State against Notre Dame. Penn State ran for over 200 yards in their win over Boise State. And while Ashton Jeanty had 109 yards, I believe it was, took him 30 carries to get those 109 yards. So they made him work for it. And he didn't have, the robust 6, 7, 8 yards a pop average like he was accustomed to all season long. And the week before that, or the game before that against SMU, they held them to under 100 yards rushing. I think they were somewhere in the 70s or 80s. Not that SMU is the most dynamic rush team in college football, but still, like that, they make it known that we're going to stop the run. And there hasn't been a better running back in college football than Ashton Jeanty, and they loaded up the box and they stopped him. And I assume they're going to do the same thing to Notre Dame. They're going to load up the box, and hopefully Jeremiah Love is good to go tonight. I know at one point he was questionable, just like Abdul Carter was questionable for Penn State. I think both of those guys are going to give it a go. But just like they loaded up the box against Boise, I think they're going to load up the box against Notre Dame. And I think that they're going to force Riley Leonard to beat them with his arm, and I'm not sure that he can get that done. Because I think they're going to stop him as a runner, and I think they're going to, or at least try to. If he can make something shake with his legs, it's going to change structurally what Penn State can and can't do. And that's going to free up some space in the pass game. Now the RPOs and all of those things that come off of it have a chance to work with a greater success rate. But if Riley Leonard's legs are rendered insignificant, the Notre Dame run game could be rendered insignificant. I just don't see how Notre Dame scores enough points to win. We're already not that dynamic of an offense if the run game's not effective. Defensively, I could flip it on its head and say the exact same thing. Penn State ran for over 200 yards against Boise. And they ran for over 180. I think they ran for 189, if I'm not mistaken, against SMU. Like, this is what they do. They run the football. And they do it with their backs. Drew Allen really isn't a threat with his legs. We know they've got a hell of a tight end in Warren. They got Allen at the running back position. They got some dogs. And if we're going to be successful in this game, if Notre Dame's going to be successful, it starts there, stopping the run. Because if you stop Penn State from running the football and you force Drew Aller to beat you, I'm not sure that he can. So what I'm essentially telling you is whose defense stops the run the best will ultimately dictate who wins this game. And if one of the two quarterbacks decides to have himself a night, that could be the difference in the game as well. Turnovers are going to be key. Who protects the ball the best? Because in a game where you're staring in the mirror and both teams want to do the exact same thing and kind of minimize the impact of their quarterback, turnovers could be the difference in the ball game. So I've said this before. I'll say it again. I'll take Notre Dame's defense over anybody's defense left in the entire tournament. Of the 4 teams left, Notre Dame's defense is the superior of the group, I think. Of the 4 offenses left, Ohio State's offense is the most dynamic, which is why I have Notre Dame and Ohio State in the national championship game. I think Notre Dame wins this game. It's not going to be a high-scoring game. I know Penn State's been scoring a bunch of points in the playoffs. I think they've scored over 30 in each of the 2 playoff games, I believe. And I know they scored a boatload of points in the Big Ten championship game. Even though they lost to Oregon, they scored a bunch of points in that game as well. So they've been scoring the football. Now, I know they scored 31 against Boise. I think this is going to be on some 19-13, 23-19 type stuff. I don't see a bunch of points being scored. I see 2 defensive teams locking in and getting it done. And I think 1 or 2 mistakes, whether it's a missed field goal or a fumble or an interception or something of that sort, is going to be the difference in the game. Maybe somebody pops a big run. But ultimately, I think Notre Dame's defense is the superior of the 2. They get it done, and they win this game 23-19 over Penn State. They get a late stop in the ball game to preserve the 4-point victory. Go Irish. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 473rd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. We're going to have a big show tonight on the Commanders Nightly News tip. So if you are available tonight at 9 p.m., it's a turn-up night. I owe a bet. I have to pay my debt on a bet. Shout out to my guy, David Brown. He made good on his end of the deal, so now I have to make good on mine. So I'm taking shots tonight, so you know how that can go. So it's gonna be a fun night. So hopefully you'll be able to join me tonight, 9 o'clock p.m. Commanders Nightly News. We got a lot to discuss. We talking playoff football, guys and gals. We're talking playoffs. Yeah. And once again, while I got your ear, before we get out of here, we are going to be live from Richmond at City's Bar and Grill on Sunday night for the Commanders Buccaneers playoff game. If you are around the area and you want to be a part of the fun, the link is in the description of this video. Also going to be pinned to the comment section. Click that link, get you a ticket, and be a part of the fun. It's going to be one to remember. We're going to make sure that this is a hell of an event, and hopefully we bring home the dub all in one fell swoop. If you need lodging, we have a couple of places, but I think we're locking in on one in particular where we're going to get you a discounted rate, get you in a hotel if you need to have somewhere to stay overnight. Obviously, it's a late game, so whatever you need, we got you. If you want to be a part of this, just say the word. We can make it happen. Hit me up if you got any questions, concerns, LouieTeeNetwork@gmail.com. Otherwise, the link is in the description of this video, pinned to the comment section. Come be a part of the fun. Can't wait to chop it up with you guys on Sunday night as we root on the good guys and try to bring home our first playoff dub in damn near 20 years. Until next time, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. I'll see you guys tomorrow. God bless and good night.